there are a bunch of people and systems and databases with people next to and at Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, which is right before the highway divides the north end of Hartford, which was designed to unfold as individual houses then became 2 and 3 family houses, which changed the narratives and nature of the yards. In other words, in other words, and the nature, not just the nature of privacy, but for example, privacy, non-privacy. Distinctly, the suburbs were designed, and then the suburban slash urban, as Hartford is self-described, but as nature describes it too. That was designed before, many ways, before America's founders were even born. Some of the houses were already built. And they communicated, nature communicated other about American history than they asked to have communicated for themselves because they did not have free speech. Too long that people have gotten away with saying, "Oh, if the presidents didn't have free speech, then how would they put us told to get free speech?" If you pay attention, they communicated they didn't have free speech. They declassified it. Everyone had to hide their actual motivations because internationally monitored conversations themselves used remotely, individually grouped and together. The countries involved with that. Even after they were okay, now there was a country. Our America, George, they were using James Madison's plan was to force everyone to get the Constitution unabridged. We have not gotten it unabridged yet. We have not gotten unentrenched collusion /S with all natures of campuses, including research campuses. A whole bunch of people with the Wethersfield Parks and Recs, and with the community center, are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Kevin Dillon, and with people who have roles of predicate acts on my street in the past from other areas, and people further like with the name Colo involved with Wethersfield Police, like with ones with the name Mendez, with identity theft frauds, putting fake conversations with people at the police station when I was a kid and as an adult. As a kid, I didn't even go down there. As an adult, they stole my sentence. They put me in the fake words with my Saudi friend. With one of the Mendez brothers, I never had a word with in my life. I never had a class with either of them. Someone told me his name. He walked by smiling a couple times. I remember that years ago. That was recorded with people I recorded, other than they pretended, and they should not have hid that from my parents, including their roles with homebreaking and wire crime acts and methods tied to that. Much worse, predicate acts. These are people with a Mendez and with the name DeMoron and people tied to them, I don't know other names, on Valley Crest Street in Wethersfield and on Church Street in Old Wethersfield and Copper Mill, who have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the roles with people involved with various natures of organized crimes, proven, and ones further involved, also with body dumping spots, and their roles with foreign and domestic intelligence, and their uses of that to faking as roles, faking and changing everything that's recorded, and with some black KKK Confederate flag themed, Latino themed, and interreligious spots, nutbags. Per themselves. I minded my business. They kept repeating it and then it was brought up more and more. These are the people involved with, I caught them with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. I recorded more youth /S. They had time collusions with roles with such, forcing it. How come we never get to the roles forcing it as they're actually recorded? On a mass scale, the intelligence has been faking and changing things. Some ways it's people with the databases at the news locations. I'm not a journalist. There are other journalists. There are journalists I noticed in various ways. and the timing of it tied to people tied to a Tom Perron and a Danielle Perron are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by people associated with Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut. They're involved with a Mark Violet. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with intelligence families near me. Involved with him with Trinity College, Central Connecticut State University in Yukon, planting identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also with people from Canada and people from Mexico and Saudi Arabia, who they had time collusions with, and people from Afghanistan, though, from through decades. People from Russia and Ukraine at the same time too. People from Korea at the same time too, with retired police chiefs. Increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they have sequence ships where they use their differences into branch and leaving out. In other words, these are people like they're timing where people go, and these are people that pretended on a mass scale. They pretend people have conversations with themselves. They even pretended through the mail. People who have personally and professionally involved with judges and prosecutors. Increasingly, people on up the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut and on up the state corrections offices of Connecticut has roles with all kinds of natures of organized crime acts and home break-ins with the people involved with predicate acts with their educators. These are identity theft, fraud, slanders. How many medicines crimes they have roles with? The same house /S with wire crimes with Weathersfield Police, falsified police reports. At the police station, too, they're putting fake transcripts there, fake communications with themselves. When I was a kid, Chris Walters recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they forced him as a private school kid to pretend I knew him. They put him in a car with me. I didn't even communicate with him. And to pretend he knew me. And they wanted me to go out to the police station and speak with them. In other words, I didn't go down there. They pretended I went down there as a police station. I didn't go have any communication with them. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. They refused to identify themselves legitimately since I was a kid. And these are names from Connecticut, intercities, intra-cities, intra-campuses, as the ones that are involved with the World Trade Center attack in New York. And at the World Trade Center, and names next to it, and the court next to it. You guys are trying to be led by guilt while having been used remotely, too, to change and fake what people say regarding such serious things and or to self-value rules, too. As the intelligence agencies, have been doing that while tactically delusions wrought, too. There's an officer, Poison, who's increasingly involved with child offenders, including sexual and medical, with doctors, foreign and domestic, military, foreign and domestic. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with Kevin Dillon and a guy who said he was his partner, and people tied to a Smith family who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fair Lane Drive when I was a kid and I was an adult, a whole bunch of ways. Increasing those roles with the people that have tied by syntax associated and names associated with the World Trade Center attack. Intercities, interstates, international, having been coordinated by worse. It's recorded how they use the identities of America and of Saudi Arabia remotely as a certain type of every individual, even if they are a leader of people, the most powerful leader, any grouping of countries, while the locations, areas, and states are still individuals, group differences, uses, and all simultaneous appreciations, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Quinnipiac University, I didn't go to school there. They have a whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Harris, and his family is involved with various natures of medical crimes and identity theft, fraud, slanders, also with judges and prosecutors and people involved with bringing with the medical corruption. They have kids from public schools brought on to public schools to further cover-ups of identity theft, fraud, slander rules, needs, natures, and styles. Right through since founding, you guys have other communicated for what James Madison and our founders behind him his plan communicated that it's most principle for American history. You can't even get what nature communicates with black people's whites and bodies. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. And you guys bring up serious things like in other words, inclusion, like punks law is collusion. There are black and white KKK Latino themed from Connecticut that sought me out to communicate confessions, demonstrate, record, confirm. They're putting fake things in databases. Their differences, racketeering rules. Also, the branches of government confessions non-verbally. Kevin Dillon's one of the ones who non-verbally went like that and looked at my neighbor's house after they already bought it too. And he was wearing parachute pants, and this was like 2006. I mean, this is like I forgot what year it was. That was right before the first time they forced me into Hartford Hospital because I forced people to call the police without telling them why. He's also involved with a whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Robert Rodriguez is one of the ones involved with intercities, with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, and with shopping centers and malls. In his syntax, he used the word logistics. He's involved with people with Korea, and nothing against Koreans. It's the people with psychiatry with all these different countries. That's one thing I noticed that connects these people. The roles next to Hartford Hospital with criminal enterprises, putting identity thefts and frauds, fake things in the mail. They're refusing to identify themselves legitimately into branch. A Leahy family and a bunch of others are personally and professionally involved with judges and prosecutors who had timed collusions with their families with child offenders, sexual and medical, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones at the same time. They have roles with identity theft, fraud, slander method, where they've been lying to the family members of people since they are kids, if they are not self-value roles, with the identities, the names of the people of the sciences, with syntax that was and is used by others. So while they are all the difference of that is used remotely by a breaching method at countries A through Z. It's not just economic, all the variables we discern. That why and how people speak about economics. Meanwhile, little kids know correctly. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. They're all tactically denatured. The water is gone. It's all the fresh water polluted. All natures, we got private industry, those natures of debate. You guys, you can't afford to have discern what is actually proper debate. Because all sides, the difference of sides of cases too, you're leaving out and changing finite details as collusion /s while being haven't been used remotely. A whole bunch of people at the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices have roles with predicate acts with facts methods, with people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me on my streets since I was a little kid. And now these are the ones involved with their extended family members, or people they called their extended family members years before, who are involved with the World Trade Center attack, the spot at it, next to it, and the court next to it. The court itself and names on both sides of that case. We're involved with the ones who wire crimes against me, mail crimes against me, fake conversations with me, fake ties to me since I was a kid, with their kids too. As the ones I caught doing that, forcing the principal child abuser. These are styles, needs, and natures. These are sick, demented people that have roles with thought as psychiatry. Putting fake conversation, changing with, in other words, all kinds of natures of organized crimes and collusion /s with them, including with the lawyers tied to them, people with the election spots, the differences of the guilt with the different agencies involved, federal agencies like in their defending capacities, is obligated for the leaders of the law to charge former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and the court's judges and their family members involved with the ones named Colon and Smith and the ones I don't know the names of yet, and the people with Hartford Hospital with the names Lombardo and Leahy with predicate acts with this Dillon family, a whole bunch of people tied to him. I recognize, I don't know their names, associated with the Weathersfield Community Center, involved with this Kevin Dillon, and people with the name Chloe and Tomorrow, and someone with the name Dave, with them with military too, next to the state capitol, and or next to the the Connecticut corrections offices. These are people also who have roles with people named Scalora involved with the World Trade Center attack and the investigators of it. And in other words, these are people involved with identity theft, fraud, slavery. I didn't even have a class, never saw them on the campus in my life. The only exception was one time from across a gymnasium in Glastonbury, Connecticut. He was influenced by a Subby Bajario, or no, a Subby Scalora was influenced to yell that across the gym to me that he wanted me to go into to fight him. I didn't know who he was. It was to make it look like I knew who he was. And he was trying to get me arrested, obviously, too. These are his cousins live near me. They're trying to get me arrested since I was a kid with judges and prosecutors involved with them. I waited to respond to it because I knew someday I have to defend my kids. These are some sick people. Now I'm not, in other words, they're doing this. They're preventing people from having having social relations. They're going in phases too. It's not by accident. There is no place for social interaction. Any place is a role for social interaction. All the differences, rackets, roles come in there to cover up their life progressions. We're interbranch in the foreign too. They're nutbags with differences. They're not being able to afford to discern the difference of how, like, we have eyes differently from the rest of the species bodies. But we are distinct. We are distinct from them, but we are non-distinct from them too. And per that which is not us nor them, but which is all things anyway. So we could discern its body, even though it is hyper invisible, but still discernible. Conjunction to all things, like the invisible, but still discernible, such as the parts of speech, not just of English grammar. This is about the identity of all space/existence. Vaccines. I teach us things, but Lord, I forgot what I titled this video. If that video title stayed on there, so the YouTuber could remember. I should have taken notes, but in other words, Fox Connecticut News is increasingly involved with intelligence next to them and people tied to them. And then further, there's a hyperforeign involved. And they lie about what they think about when we use their names or other people's names relative to their roles. Also, the other news agencies and types of and journalist families. I'm not a journalist. Journalists are directed to lie, and not for legitimate reasons. They are also leaking through silence, with the interbranch refusing to identify themselves, forging and switching names, and pretending passions and emotions for why, using every truth for a lie too. That's discernible. That's why they can't get on paper. That when they get on paper, they are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. You guys bring out this, you guys pretend that you can't and really can't discern. How many Americans could discern how there's a school book depository and how there are all kinds of scams, and they need to hide that by self. And like, for example, where they have American history told, they're making convictions by reality that are sick. And there are self-value roles with it as that theater of business. Oh, that was just because that's how we speak for business. That's not real. Then why are they jumping in and changing other people's speech? Self-value roles with it. Watch what happens if you speak about the predicate acts with facts. I'm not even a lawyer. The predicate acts with facts were how you could discern. We have black people as whites of eyes, and that's inseparable from the subject of slavery. How others gotten away with being pretended is relative to where and how the breaching method keeps other things, others ourselves, blamed rather than what our founders communicated for us to blame about how the breaching method forced roles with itself on everybody, including every group, including if they were a majority of people, including if they're everyone of an entire colony or country that it was in possession of, per a method that had been perfected from some ancient times. It forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded others themselves to be blamed for things they caused and did. And then that made them self-value that and defend that. Knowing more and more could force, trick, hurt, and persuade the names of humanity to a state where they would be, incapable of affording to be used the names of the sciences properly, or the names of the people of the sciences properly, or the difference of that. And so it could use everyone's syntax, nature, needs, and styles. Blaming other things, others themselves until it comes true, too. And still those truths. It knew that nature itself was going to show was a breaching method involved. They have replaced this from inside the communications of our founders. Through it they declassified to us, black pupils. See president/chief. They still had not means to declassify about that. Because still, the differences of the people into branch. Oh, I'm this culture, I'm that culture. You guys have other things, others yourselves. Blamed for what nature in itself. And our founders communicated, and nature communicates that a human fact treatment nature breaching method reassigned black pupils whites of eyes. And it forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded roles with it. And it made those roles be in deep trouble if they didn't sense everyone else roles with it. As people speaking about crimes that hadn't have roles of predicate acts with facts much worse than crimes. That they've been collusion/S also with the natures. See, this is a use of location/S. Everywhere the species body has a body standing, a name, a difference. And then further through those records, we have told to us when they tell history, and music in the background. Oh, because then people won't watch. People won't watch because you guys aren't with the principles, black people. Stay with the principles, so we don't have to keep repeating the same thing. Someone should be repeating it every day, though, but no one repeats. I never heard it right. I read that we were supposed to refer to our founders as James Madison and those behind him and his plan. See, they have takes on American history entertained by psychiatry and ones with badges from America and other countries that are still criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Tools by way worse. But these are like the sickest people where they have time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. With the difference of them being worse or them, no, the crimes are going to be worse by the people, violent things like that. But when you really pay attention, they have roles with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and collusions with all natures of crime scenes, and the worst uses of the worst at any country A through Z. I'm not just saying foreign in America. I'm saying any country A through Z, foreign system, even hyper. Every system A through Z is criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. Systems tactical terror from the one that's human species body of individual body differences, therefore names. Difference / differences, therefore names. Therefore name/S per science. But it's science to be led by hyper invisible but still discernible. So we're supposed to, but to do that and be science, we need to be we have to use the invisible but still discernible. So we have to make a name for the identity of all space / existence. We can't force everyone to speak about this. We to agree about the name, but we have to force people to pick one name and stick with it, so we can finish this conversation that we have, not even be allowed to do anything but start over and over again, and not go into the rest of it right here, where we have means better than, we have means to go like this at the same time and change the value of everything, change the nature of everything. Oh, but then what's this industry going to do? In other words, that's why before we get into industries and economies, our founders, not just in America, are supposed to address what was since semi-ancient times demonstrably self-value rules of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Databases, identities of relativity / relativities to us, A through Z. And that caused and causes all kinds of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. But rather than blaming on what is causing it, everyone blames it on other things other than themselves, and that's maintained. Even if it's not through a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, even if there never was one, there are proofs that they're positive. We can make positives at A through Z just by charging one, making an ace act, and who disbelieves act at the same time, having the proper shared campus to an extent with principles proper. But you don't even have whites of eyes proper yet. You don't bring up that how there's the famous American sentence: "Don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes," and then pretend it's even debatable, that it's more than just plausible, that our founders wanted us to communicate with that about how there was breaching method laws with black and white, forced by a breaching method that was already entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies, with way more than just that at the same time, to be used by what no one discerned. And where and how there are means to demonstrate it manifest, it's a recorded use /S of all location /S, everywhere the human species body stands. But it's a method that relies on how locations, areas, and states are the ones only capable of using the country name. And those are styles that are reliant upon defenses of what it taught and what it failed to, or what it failed to teach, or the difference of that. So everyone's hiding the answers and hiding why, because the answer is James Madison's plan. They forced the other founders, and there are proofs that Native Americans were part of the founders with James Madison's plan, that and our directions to refer to them plural as him singular, James Madison. So you guys fake and change what people speak, and always whisper creed, Maxine. So that's why people bring up inclusion, leaving out tactically denatured ground location /S. So means come out of there, like out of nowhere, once we admit that, or once we let people deny it on paper. You try to deny that the ground below the suburbs feet is tactically denatured, you're going to demonstrate the same thing. Your logic is going to have inherent to it, active to it, progressive to it. Demonstrations is the same thing. Let alone if you try to pretend that you can't discern that and how suburban /urban and urban are also, especially urban, straight up urban. tactically denatured, designed, forced by the breaching method that designed suburbs with slavery entrenched northern colonies. So, oh, it was for wealth why they made that. That's not why they had slavery entrenched. This breaching method, there are proofs that it took down a mountain range and what is now America and Mexico. And it divided humanity for the human body A through Z. And consciously, that was the plan. The human body of individual bodies with all group differences generated by the breaching method. It made everyone forget that breaching method's body. Why? We need to discern it better and better. The ancients couldn't fathom anyone could get anyone to forget that, let alone self-value it. Rolls with that, denying that, which is increasingly a demonstration to us anyway. And we could ignore it, but it forces a special difference away from here as Earth's value, as your own. Forced away these of Hadiths. This is how the science of pantheism was more probably and demonstrably having been about the one identity of all space/existence, how it is functional being, hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from the invisible but still discernible parts of speech. I speak about that in my last live stream video. YouTubers, 10, prepare. Please get them on one name and sequence. FBI Director Robert Luskin has a whole bunch of people that recorded involved with Harvard Hospital that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have, and with whiting forensics through time. People associated with Mark Violet and a Joshua Julian and a Ray Colon. A Ray Colon and a Joshua Julian were influenced by people involved with them with the intelligence community, but also by the hyperforeign to repeat the name Joshua Julian to me. Then they had to hide live-progressions on Facebook and on the Facebook page of a proven principal child abusers campus and other campuses that the agencies have been changing and faking what's digitally recorded. And then they they do whatever, and they make someone say something mean about people, and they pretend that's their motive. And then increasingly, they don't know how to teach the white kids manners. How are they going to teach people? And like with the black themed collusions with the KKK Confederate flag theme intelligence and judges. There are black, white women judges involved with some child offenders, also black KKK Confederate flag theme. Also, in other words, they're planting evidences with judges and using exceptions, criminally foreign influence, where they confess things and demonstrate things that way too. In other words, I didn't know that when I let that kid borrow a book with Kevin Justin Kovinskis and Mark Violet, and that was before they told me they were in the KKK. And with black people involved with the military next to Trinity College, and with people that went to my grammar school. I don't think they went to my grammar school. And there's a girl that was in my grammar school who was told a bunch of lies about me. I never had a class with her, I never saw her around. They tried to make one exception right before I graduated to be involved with the Justin Kovinskis. In other words, I never had a class with him there, even so he's younger than me. See, people are younger than me and older than me involved with the people with the false flag police reports with the police department, where they also faked conversations with me when I was a kid and I was an adult to hide what I recorded them doing and what others did, distinctly, non-distinctly though, too. And where they get over on the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous nature. As you. And as your only increasing value, as that which is not us, but it is all things anyway, so it is us. Have a great night, people. Would you please? And Fox Connecticut News, please get the interbranch on paper. When I'm going to show you how they're playing games. They have people putting fake things in databases, and they have the families of probate court judges involved with behavior racketeering with their family members, as the ones involved with the foreign and domestic military translators, collusions with the World Trade Center attack, through other natures of you being and having been used. Oh, it's just my job, though. Like, but you got to change and fake what people say about predicate acts, and then you search the hierarchy to self-value collusions with it, and all of it's not even a real, it's not even possession of their name. At countries A through Z, here Anthony, Fox sings. I teach those things better than free. That's how you do. You make everyone peaceful. I mean, hyper peace. You discern the difference because there's criminal and citizen natures of peace. That's proof enough that we have to discern hyper peace distinctly from peace. Peace. Campus Marcius rises in east. I have to find a better rhyme.